Let's get to the next question. This is on YouTube from @theConnorJoeTrade. And he says, aside from the obvious sellers, White Sox, Marlins, etc., who are the two most intriguing sellers from each league, and who's your number one trade target from each?
So I tried to branch out a little bit with this because the question states aside from the obvious teams, so not the A's, not the White Sox, not the Marlins, teams like that. I'll start with the AL. I said Blue Jays and Rays for the AL. Or sorry, I thought about the Blue Jays and Rays. I kept the Rays and said Brandon Lau, who we've talked about. That would be a fit that makes a lot of sense. Rental bat, second base, WRC plus is close to 130, hits the ball hard. That makes too much sense for the Mariners if they're going to need a second baseman. The other one, I will admit this one's a little bit of a pipe dream, but with the Rangers being out of it, or not out of it, but they're not playing well. They're under 500. They're still 7 back in the division. If they keep losing and they got to the point of the deadline where they actually thought about doing some selling, like again, I'll say this as a pipe dream idea, but Nathaniel Lowe would be a pretty sick addition. So if I'm just talking about good fits for the Mariners, first baseman, 2.5 years of control, it's like a 110 WRC plus hitter, walks a decent amount, doesn't strike out a ton. I'd love to get that guy in Seattle. Now, again, it's probably a pipe dream, but would love to see Nathaniel Lowe.
Now, this question was tricky because when he says aside from the obvious sellers, the problem is there are so few sellers true sellers in Major League Baseball because of the third wild card. So note, just because we are picking these teams as sellers does not mean these teams will sell, because most of these teams are within 5 games of the wild card or less right now, which for some teams is very doable.
So let me say this, too. 1, I agree with you. 2, I did my AL guys. Give your AL guys, and we can do the NL guys after.
So my AL guys, I did choose the Blue Jays because I think they can have the most impact of any team on this deadline if they're selling. They can swing pennant races with the pieces they have available to them with whoever they decide to trade with. And for the Blue Jays, I think Vladdy was too obvious, and it, again, just doesn't really sound like he's going to get traded. So I'm going to choose the guy I've been hammering for a while and I think would make the Mariners better, and that's Danny Jansen. I think they need they need another catcher. I really think they do. And then the other team I chose was the Detroit Tigers. They might sell, they might not. They have a couple of intriguing options. Jack Flaherty's on a rental. It will be a rental if you trade for him. The Mariners don't need starters, though, but they do have Mark Canha, who, if you want someone, that would be a soft buy, what we were talking about earlier this week. Soft buying and improving in an outfield spot. Instead of having Mitch Haniger, you have Mark Canha instead, and you upgrade quite a bit.
Yeah. You know, when I was looking at the Blue Jays, I thought about the idea of Justin Turner. Even though he's 39 years old, I thought to myself, could play the corner infield, could DH if you need him to, has been a great bat over the majority of his career. But then I dug into some of the peripherals, and he is in the first percentile of bat speed. So I said, you know what? That's probably not a great fit, which is why I ended up pivoting somewhere else. So thought about it, didn't go through with the idea. National League, I said Giants and Diamondbacks. Again, will these two teams sell? We don't know. The NL wildcard is so up in the air. But if they do, my 2 guys on the list are 2 players we've talked about. Lamont Wade, Christian Walker. Christian Walker would be a great addition for this team at the deadline. Should have been an all-star. Power bat, 133 WRC plus hitter. OPS is 840. Rental, wouldn't have to give up a ton. And you could roll with Tyler Locklear in 2025 if you don't re-sign Walker in the offseason. So I said Walker for the Diamondbacks, and I said Lamont Wade for the Giants, who we've talked about as sort of a platoon bat. But you know what? When you're WRC plusing nearly 160 and you're walking almost 20% of the time, I'm interested.
I had the Diamondbacks as well, and I chose the Cubs instead, although the Cubs... This news came out right before we hit record with Cody Bellinger going on the IL, because that would have been my most intriguing target. I know you're not a huge Cody Bellinger guy, but I think he could have had some sort of value if you acquire him at the deadline. Who knows if he's going to be back and playing by the time the deadline rolls around, which will, A, impact his value, B, could incline him, no matter what now, to pick up his player option next year, which is $27.5 million. So I'll keep the Cubs. But the Diamondbacks, though, outside of the Blue Jays, their pieces, if they decide to sell, can impact it can swing a pennant race if they want. Like Christian Walker's that good. We talked about Randall Grichuk. He is, in terms of a soft buy, he would make a massive impact if you put him in the outfield as a right-handed bat for how he's hit this season. Paul Sewald's also an option as well. So I think those are two pretty good ones right there. Diamondbacks, Cubs. There's a lot of teams you could choose in the National League because they're all bunched right together.
I agree. And that National League wildcard race is going to have some impact here in the next few weeks. We will start to see some teams fall out of it a little bit more. We've already seen it a little bit. I know the Cubs are technically about 3.5 back now, but Bellinger goes out. They're still way under 500. Some of these teams will sell because some of these teams will look at their roster and say, we are not quite a playoff team. And because of that, they'll be willing to ship some pieces away.